Hello and welcome to Real People. My name is Dwight Pressner and I'll be your host. Now, standing next to me here is Eric Gleisner, and he owns Inland Lakes Harvesting Company, is that
Inland
it?
Lakes Weed Harvesting.
Inland Lakes Weed Harvesting. So I guess technically, is that the name of what you do? You harvest weed?
Yeah, it's really aquatic vegetation. It's weeds in the ocean is kelp,
Right.
but in freshwater lakes it's aquatic vegetation. They used to call it, back in the day, weeds.
Right.
But they know now that these are not necessarily invasive species.
Now, one of the things that I'm curious about is you call it harvesting. I mean, what you cut out of the lakes, is it reused somewhere else?
Yeah, in farms and for mulch and landscaping.
So it's
Definitely.
rich in nutrients?
Rich in nutrients, nitrogen, phosphorus, all the trace elements, everything that's needed for growing vegetables.
Now, is it true that the new accelerated growth of the weeds is caused by fertilizer runoff from the land?
That's primarily the issue. The runoff from in the watershed of all the lakes, from the fertilizers, go into the lakes and promote weed growth.
So it's not necessarily natural vegetation. It's
Well, it is.
abnormal?
It's natural vegetation promoted man-made eutrophication, they call it. Eutrophication is the natural aging of lakes.
Right.
And then this is man-made eutrophication. It'd be like global warming. Man-made speeds that up. So in 10,000 years, a lake would probably fill in or
Right.
more, which is the definition of eutrophication. A man-made eutrophication is a few tens of years, can accelerate that process through building around the lakes, the watershed, and all the fertilizers and everything going into the lake.
Well, it sounds like you have somewhat of a scientific background just by what you're saying. I mean, is this something that you've learned through the years?
I was doing landscaping, but it was mainly we were skiing competitively on the lakes, and the chemicals they were putting in the lakes caused all kinds of eye, ear, nose, throat problems. And the county had a project going. They wanted to have an alternative to putting chemicals into lakes because they knew that was a bad situation. It would kill the vegetation, cause the depletion of oxygen in the lakes.
So it killed more than just the vegetation,
Right.
maybe some of the
Right,
life like fish?
Well, when it reduces the oxygen in the lake, it's like having a house caught on fire. You don't die from the fire, you would die from oxygen.
Suffocation.
Suffocation. Same thing in the lake. It's the whole atmosphere in that lake. And when you kill the vegetation, it sucks up the oxygen in that decomposition process.
You truly are vertically integrated, just
Yes.
right from the equipment that you actually use.
Yes.
Now, do you ever build a boat for other companies?
Yes, I have. I've sold like four machines since last July. And they've gone up to Detroit Lakes, Minnesota. And some have gone to Indiana, Ohio, and New York.
Well, that's great. So, I mean, you don't have to worry about spare parts. You just fabricate whatever you need.
Well, we also get spare parts from elsewhere, but yeah. The things
Well, I
that
know
we
some of
can't-
the hydraulic pumps
Yeah.
and stuff like
Yeah.
that. It's probably
Some of the
off
things we've
shelf.
had to fabricate as well. We
Okay.
have a lot of suppliers that machine parts for us.
So once the machine was up and running, I mean, how much downtime do they see? I know hydraulics generally are pretty reliable, so is it mainly...
Well, on these machines, there's a lot of moving parts. So there are downtime. There is downtime. And we're constantly working on them and adjusting them. That's why we have multiple machines on a lake
Right.
to harvest the lake. So if one's down, we can be working on that while the other machines are still going and finishing the lake and doing the lake. That's why we have like 4 big machines to do a lake, and it takes us about a week to do each lake. And some of them we do multiple times. Every 6 weeks we come back as the regrowth comes up, we harvest it again, mow it again.
So when you say you get the contracts, I mean, is it the Lake Association that...
It is sometimes, but primarily it's special assessment districts. They set up lake boards to tax themselves to take care of the lakes. And It's called lake board. They set up a lake board,
Okay.
and we've been quite successful in establishing those. And then it runs that way. They have the funding for projects like this, and the administration of the lake board and the harvesting. And sometimes even they pull permits for chemicals to do the canals in certain shoreline areas that we can't get to. So they're not doing whole lake chemicalization that implodes the lake to cause these oxygen suffocation situations. If you take out the majority of the biomass through harvesting,
Biomass, that's a great word.
Then you don't get it.
Right.
Then you don't get those kind of problems.
So can you tell me exactly what goes on while the machine is running? It's basically cutting and drawing the weeds out of the water.
That's the definition of harvesting.
Okay.
The difference between I have cutters that cut and allow the weeds to float. This is harvesting. It cuts and removes the vegetation. It comes up on a live belt, a live conveyor, and goes into a hold, which is a live conveyor hold. And as that fills up, they jog that back. And when the whole machine becomes full, it comes back to shore, goes to a shore conveyor, and it's unloaded into the truck, and the trucks take it to the farm.
This isn't exactly boating. I mean, this machine drives a little bit differently than a regular boat.
Right.
Can you explain to me how this motivates through the water?
Yeah, it's a paddle wheel. The hydraulics run the paddle wheels, so you can go in any direction. Kind of like a bulldozer or a skid steer in the landscaping world. And then you have the sickle bar mechanisms that cut the aquatic vegetation. The front end goes down to the various levels that you need, depending on the depth of the lake.
Water, right.
And cuts and harvests the aquatic vegetation out of the lake.
So primarily you're harvesting weeds like closer to shore. You're not really cutting out in the middle of the lake.
No, because the weeds only grow to about 18 foot. And most of the weeds grow in lesser water than that.
So I mean, how high up off the bottom are your cutters actually from the bottom of the lake? I mean,
well, they go up to 5 foot. The biomass of the vegetation goes to the light,
right,
to the surface, within 5 foot of the surface. So that's what we are harvesting. We're harvesting the biomass out of the lake.
But the weeds aren't reaching the top of the water, is what you're saying?
Well, they do reach the top of the water. They go up to the top of the water.
But you're only cutting, you cut
5
down?
foot. Underneath that is just a stem.
Right.
There's no biomass at that point. And we want the weeds to regrow because they produce oxygen through photosynthesis. They provide habitat for the fish.
Right.
And they clean the lake. They clean the water and the hydrosoil beneath them. So we want to take the biomass out and then allow them to regrow and produce oxygen, continue their natural process of being fish habitat and cleaning the lake, essentially. They clean the lake, we take them out. So we're not actually cleaning the lake. The nature, Mother Nature, the vegetation cleans the lake.
The natural filtration system.
Exactly.
When we come back, we're going to have a closer look at one of his machines. He's got one up out of the water. We're going to take a walk around it, and we're going to look at exactly how these things work and all the moving parts. Thank you for watching. Hi, we're back here at Real People, and I've got Eric Gleisner standing next to me. He harvests weeds from lakes. Now, we're going to talk about the machine that he actually uses to do this work. To me, it resembles like a farm combine, but you're going to tell us a little bit more about it.
That's actually a real close, that's where it comes from farming. These are sickle bar mechanisms on the front. You notice the cutter blades,
right? And
they come from the farming industry. And we're really farming lakes. We're harvesting lakes. These are conveyor belting that harvests the biomass or aquatic vegetation. It goes up into the hold, and as that fills up, that jogs back until 6,000 pounds or 3, 4, 5 ton, 6 ton even. This machine carries back to shore and then unloads via a shore conveyor into a dump truck. So there's no pitchforking, because otherwise,
it'll take a little bit of time and a little bit of broken backs.
Yeah, we'd have a lot of back problems. And so we're taking out 1,200 tons of vegetation from these lakes per summer for multiple.
You measure that because by the load?
By the loads.
Okay.
By the loads. There's a displacement in the barges.
Oh, is that how you
They
tell
have
when it's
the
full?
little numbers on the side. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. But these guys know. They've harvested long enough. They know what they're doing. And as the hold is full, till it can't really go anymore, some of the machines will be, you can actually overload a machine and then actually have to pitchfork some of the stuff off.
Well, I imagine a lot of what you're bringing in, besides
and
the
tons.
weeds, is water. So
You are,
what happens?
and the waters are dripping off of it. And water drips off of it all the time, even out of the trucks and off the conveyors and off the machines. There's external water, and then inside the plant there is water, and that has a lot of nutrients in it.
Right.
The nitrogen, the phosphorus, the trace elements. It's part of the fertilization, really.
Right. Well, let's back up for a second. Now, you said that the actual cutting bars, what did you call those?
A sickle bar.
the
Sickle bar mechanism that go back and forth.
Just looks like a hedge trimmer almost.
Kind of like you have a base cutting blade, and then the top one moves, and it cuts against the base.
Okay. And this is actually a purchased part. You didn't fabricate that part.
Well, we adapted it
Right.
to.
But the blades itself, you didn't
yes,
cut each
right.
one.
They're made in the farming industry. They're imported from Germany. For some reason, the Germans have a angle on the.
It might just be from the techniques they use to serrate the edges, I
Yes,
guess.
something like that. They manufacture them still, and other people don't want to do it.
Okay, so now this is kind of like the business end. I mean, this
Yeah.
is what actually cuts
Yes,
and gets
absolutely.
the weeds into the boat.
Absolutely.
Okay, now let's talk about the motivation end here.
And this is 8 foot wide. Then
Okay.
you have the barge is 10 foot wide, a little wider. And then you have the hold, which holds all this biomass and the weight. And you have an engine that runs the hydraulic system. That the hydraulic system essentially operates the boat.
So the engine, you've got one engine that operates every
Everything,
moving part on here.
all the hydraulics.
Okay, so now this is the hydraulic motor over here.
Yes.
That actually turns the paddle wheels.
Yes, and
Which
one of-
presently are not on the boat because
Right.
you told me
Yep.
you can't tow it with the.
We can't move it down the road. We have special permits already from Oakland County Road Commission to move the boats because of the width. We have a 10-foot barge, and that's as large as you can move down the road.
Yeah, that's about
Wide
the width
load.
of a lane of a.
Right.
It takes up the whole lane of
Yep.
traffic,
Yes,
doesn't it?
yes.
So with this, you have to take the wheels off because
Right.
it would exceed the width of a lane.
That's correct.
Okay, so this
But
is
I know-
actually wider than a semi.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
So now the hydraulic motor, I mean, this is just purchased off the shelf, basically. It's a.
They use these in carnivals to run a whole Ferris wheel, one of these hydraulic motors.
Wow,
like
that's
that.
a powerful motor.
Identical to that. So it's very powerful. And it runs, one of these run a paddle wheel, and then the other one runs the other paddle wheel on the other side. So it's huge.
So you have no problem with torque when it comes
No.
to moving tons and tons of weeds around.
No, no. This is low-end torque.
Now, when this thing sits in the water unloaded, like without anything in your hopper, I mean, how much water does it
Well, you
draw?
can see the water line on
Okay.
here. Goes primarily here.
And then
But-
as it fills up, you must be sinking into the water.
You can, yes, especially the front end. You can see it comes up to about here.
So is that how your operator can tell when it's time to go back and unload?
No,
just by this level?
he loads it up until it's all the way loaded all the way to the end of the machine.
Okay.
And then you can't put any more on, otherwise you'd be unloading it into the lake.
So the conveyor under the operator is not running all the time. He
No.
probably moves the
Moves
weeds
it back
as
as
he
it
needs
piles
to.
up it jogs it back as it piles up and fills the machine up. The only thing that's running all the time is the front end, is running the business end. The front conveyor and the cutter blades
Right.
is running all the time. The rest of it is not.
So a lot of it has to do with a visual cue from the guy sitting above
Yes,
the bin.
the operator.
Okay. Now let's move down here. So you're moving
Moving the
load
load
back. And so once you got like a pile, you move it back, get another pile, move it back, move another pile, move it back. So now the whole hopper is full. It's time to go
Well,
back.
we actually use the offload ramp as well. We fill that up.
Oh, you fill this up
Yeah.
too?
Yes.
Okay, I was thinking this was only used to offload, but you're
Well,
actually using this for extra hauling
Yes.
capacity?
Extra hauling capacity. 650 cubic feet in here.
Well, I wouldn't have been able to do that calculation in my head. I appreciate that, Eric. So that's 600 cubic feet, and that translates into what do you say, 6 tons?
6 to 8 tons,
6
depending
to-
on the type of vegetation.
And a lot of that weight, then, the water you say is dripping off all the time. I mean,
Yeah.
these are like, is this a solid hull all the way across, or is it more like pontoons on either side of the boat?
It's a barge. There's air inside these barges with framework inside there.
Okay.
So the air, it's like a ship, carries, or a barge, carries that weight and the
Right.
weight of the machine itself, too.
So now the displacement calculation that you guys must have done while you were building this machine, I mean, where did that come from? Did you have like a benchmark of another barge?
We
that
did
you
have a
used?
benchmark of another barge that existed for aquatic vegetation harvesting. Started actually in the days when they were making ice from lakes. They were cutting ice blocks out of lakes before we had refrigerators.
Oh.
And weeds got caught in the ice, and that's where aquatic vegetation harvesting started.
So
they'd
this is
mow the
not
lake.
brand new. I mean,
No,
this goes
no, it
back
goes back
before
a-
electricity.
Kind of like, yes.
So
Yeah.
how did they run those machines? With
They were a
steam?
lot more mechanical. And,
The guy with a
yeah,
crank?
Yes, cranking them and that kind of
Pedaling
thing.
it?
Yes.
A
They had
paddle boat, literally a
paddle
pedal boat. Now, I'm looking at the trailer here. I mean, obviously how much does this weigh without any seaweed in it?
I think it weighs about 8,000 pounds.
Really?
Yeah,
I would put it heavier than that. So it's
Yeah.
about the weight of 2 cars.
kind of, yes. Yeah.
Okay. So that explains, like, you've got 3 wheels here to help
Yeah, 3 axles.
disperse that weight.
Got 6 wheels, 3 axles.
So the trailer isn't something that you just got out of a Sears and Roebuck
No, that
catalog.
was something that we had to design for it and to bring it on. The whole ability to be able to launch it and unlaunch it. The unlaunching part is very difficult. We have winches that winch the machine back up onto the trailer through a track system,
And you developed this system to launch, and
unlaunch the machines.
it's interesting. So you hook a cable up to it and you drag it up on the trailer?
Right. The machine the trailer's put halfway into the lake,
Okay.
and it's floated up onto it and lined into the tracks, and then it is drawn up through the winching system. It's winched up onto the trailer.
Okay, let's step
then-
over here and look at the toe end. Now, the winch is not on the trailer. The
No,
winch
they're
is
not.
on a...
They go in these brackets here that are
Okay.
made on the trailer, and they're kept in the tool truck that services all the equipment. There are our welders and our generators and our grinders and all the other tools and parts that we need to have on the job to keep these machines going. They're high maintenance.
So whenever you're on a job, the support vehicle goes with you.
Yes, absolutely.
So the repairs are done right on site?
Right on site.
Okay. Now, you said that now the winch, I'm kind of curious about this. Obviously, it's not on the trailer. It mounts right here.
Right.
Now, is it a hydraulic winch?
These are electric winches that
Okay.
hook up, and they're
So you use a
they're
generator?
hooked, no, they're hooked to the truck.
Okay.
The tow truck, the truck that's hooked to the trailer, and it's hooked to their battery, that battery system.
So a regular car
Automotive,
battery is
yes.
powerful
Yeah,
enough
powerful
to drag
enough to
this
drag it
beast
up.
on a...
Yep.
Now, when your trucks haul the stuff off, where exactly do they go?
They go to a couple of local farms in the area and to landscapers afterwards too, to use as mulch. But the local farms grow asparagus and various other types of.
So they just take it raw the way it
Yes,
is,
it
and
is.
they mulch it up
Yeah,
themselves?
they mulch it up. It actually mulches itself, and then they just use it and put it on the lakes.
Now I see you're holding.
This is a map of a particular lake, Upper Straits, where we're on here, but most of the lakes are very similar in this area that we do. We go through the Bloomfield areas, West Bloomfield and Bloomfield Township primarily, we're in, and we harvest the lakes, most of them multiple times. This particular lake that we're on is Upper Straits Lake in West Bloomfield, and we have maps of areas to harvest and areas not to harvest that we want to keep natural in the lake.
That's where the cranes
That's
hang out and eat
right.
the fish. Right?
Yes.
So this is like cut and do not cut. The
Right.
yellow part is cut. The red is not to cut.
Right. We wanna
And
cut the
this
ski-
comes
we don't
from
wanna
the
cut the ski
association.
course.
You guys don't decide what you cut and what you don't cut.
We do sometimes in consultation with the association, and but they generally know their own lake better. Just as I know my lake pretty well,
Right.
and I assist in the planning part of that lake. But the other lakes do it on their own, and we offer advice to them because of our knowledge and history and experience.
Well, you
harvesting
certainly are
lake.
very knowledgeable about something I know nothing of, and it was a pleasure meeting you, Eric. Thank you
been
so
you.
much for
Do
coming
I-
on the show.